Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Okay, I am annoyed about something. And the ironic part is that the people who most need to hear this aren't listening, because if they were, I wouldn't be having this problem.
Is this going to be a Rachel's rant off an off season or an off episode?
Well, my life is almost always partially a rant. So, yes.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, so we get a couple times a week, we get a pitch from someone who's usually representing someone, and it's like, do you want this person to be on your podcast?
Yeah.
I have
get them all the time.
Literally never once accepted. You want to know why? It is very clear they copied and pasted it, that they have never listened to this podcast, that they have no idea what this podcast is actually about, and that they're not even putting the slightest bit of effort into listening to maybe 10 minutes of one episode just to pretend they listen to this podcast.
I know, it would not be that hard to say, hey, I listened to this episode. I liked this takeaway.
Yes.
And it made me think of this client of mine or this topic that I think you should talk about.
It would be so much more effective. Every single time I have resisted. But every single time I want to write back and be like, if you wanted me to say yes, this is what you should have done. And if you want the next person you pitch to say yes, you need to take 10 extra minutes to put in the actual effort at making this personal. Because I do not want to say yes to your bland-ass podcast guest if the person they've hired to do the work is not even bothering to, try to sell you to me. You know, you're not doing the best work if you're not trying that hard.
I want to piggyback off of this and say, nowhere is this more apparent than online dating. How many messages do any of you, and I can only speak for women, when you get a ton of messages from random dudes who are like, hey, what's your favorite vacation spot?
How was your weekend?
What are you up to this weekend?
Or just, hey. I mean, really, just jump right off a cliff.
They didn't read your profile. They don't really care. There's nothing personal about that. It's just copy and paste job.
No, they're drooling somewhere, in a basement, is all I can imagine.
So this is actually relevant to today's blog topic.
It's 100% relevant because this blog is it's an old blog. I'm bringing it back. It's from almost 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, about the worst thing you can do if you're looking for a job, which is pretty much the worst thing you can do if you're dating or if you're trying to pitch someone to be on their podcast, which is you're generic, you're bland, you're conformist. You listen to quote unquote industry advice about quote unquote what works. I'm like, I don't understand why anyone would want to hire someone when it looks like the cover letter is just copied and pasted from a different template.
We've lost the human element in that approach. There's no personality to that. There's no actual connection.
So anyway, in this blog, I get into why I feel like we are so wrong when we trust these sort of online advice and lists about here's what you should write, here's what you should focus on, this is the best way to get a job, this is the best way to write a cover letter. I'm not saying there can't be good advice in there, but if you are trying too hard to sound right, quote unquote, or to sound professional, you are almost always shooting yourself in the foot because you're taking out the only thing that's actually compelling about you, which is your individuality and your personality and your uniqueness. And that is what all of these stupid people who are pitching us lack. There's no uniqueness. There's no personality. There's absolutely no effort at I am a real person who actually listened to your podcast rather than a robot who copied and pasted this generic email. I want to talk to a real human. And then maybe I would consider having your person on the podcast. But as of now, nope.
So you just gave, and we both just gave a bunch more examples for how you can apply this, not just about a job.
I know,
but the blog is about a job.
This is a 4-minute rant already and haven't even begun the blog.
Well, maybe we should go into it. Let's hear it.
The worst thing you can do if you're looking for a job. I'll admit, a lot of what motivates me in my writing and coaching can be boiled down to something I'd call professional outrage. I know I'm supposed to be non-judgy and infinitely patient, and I am with my clients because they're cool people and they deserve that from me. But there are some things that I straight up loathe, as in, when I come across them, my eyes narrow and my nostrils flare, and I acquire a Draco-Malfoy-worthy sneer. And while there are many things I could hate on, for now, I'm going to focus on only one. When it comes to looking for a job, here's a sampling of things that ruffle my professional feathers. Career articles that purport to have the 5 best things to say in your cover letter or resume, or similarly phrased BS listicles like that. Well-meaning but inexperienced people who give you advice that's more about what they'd do in your situation, not necessarily what you should do. Bad career counselors who say they don't know how to help you if you want to do something different than what you're educated or qualified for. Anyone who claims they know the exact right things to say in an interview to get the job. Just writing this makes me angry. Because nowhere in that list, and I see these things happening to people over and over and over again, is anyone advocating for you. So much conventional career advice is about you shape-shifting and manipulating who you are to fit in and become someone that other people want to hire. I find every bit of mainstream career advice woefully freaking lackluster. And in my professional outrage, I refuse to let it stand as is. I've got a pretty damn good case for why you should never alter who you are to get a job. Let's be clear first about where this really comes from. Why do we buy into the lists, the bad advice, the best practices? It's certainly not because it feels good. In fact, I'd argue that in most cases, it feels actively bad to mold yourself into what you believe other people want in a prospective employee. Fear. It all boils down to fear. We buy into all of it because we're desperate for a job, any job sometimes, and scared of being in a bad financial situation. Or we're afraid we'll say the wrong thing and screw ourselves out of a great opportunity and therefore miss the boat on other opportunities. Or we don't feel particularly good at the whole job search process and we're afraid to trust our own judgment over those of experts who know better. Or we're not confident in our own talent and afraid that people will see through our insecurity unless we spin ourselves just the right way. Or we're afraid of taking a non-traditional route or actively going against the advice of our friends and family out of fear of what they might say. Or we're afraid of looking like a failure, period. I could probably go on, but I'm sure you can relate to at least one of those. The bottom line is that it's easy to follow the mainstream advice when you're being motivated by fear. But what happens when the mainstream advice inevitably doesn't work for you? I meet most people, clients, people in our courses, or even people who just randomly email us directly because conventional advice has done absolutely nothing for them. They're frustrated. They did all the quote-unquote right things, they got the job, and it's still not fulfilling. I spoke to someone recently, I'll call her Eva, who compared the job search process to this cartoon she used to watch when she was little. I'd never heard of it, but the premise involved shape-shifting creatures who could turn themselves into anything they wanted, chairs, cars, houses, whatever, and then their subsequent adventures. She told me, I feel like one of those shapeshifters. I'm constantly trying to mold myself into what I think people want to see or hear, and I'm exhausted. I'm not hearing back from anyone, and I keep getting rejected. I'm not getting anywhere. Eva has become an expert over the course of many years at following mainstream advice, and it's let her down. So I proposed a new way of doing things. My guidance boiled down to 3 words. Stop shape-shifting. If you're shape-shifting in order to get a job, you'll never experience real career fulfillment. Instead, do something that feels pretty radical. Be yourself at every step of the job search process. This felt scary to Eva. If she's just being herself, then she's probably going to get rejected a lot. She won't be saying the right things. She can't control the process anymore. But it's going to work for her, and here's why. Shape-shifting is boring. Saying what you think people want to hear is a much bigger gamble than just being yourself. When you alter who you are to fit in, you end up blending in, not standing out. You become boring, someone who's all too easily glossed over. It also feels terrible. It's a compromise of the soul that just doesn't sit well. Everyone else is trying to say the right thing anyway. Thousands of other people are reading articles about the top 5 best things to say in an interview or whatever. Desperate job seekers everywhere are using the same washed-up strategies, and employers are probably tired of it. It comes across as disingenuous and unoriginal. Also, rejection from the wrong people is a good thing. Yeah, if you're not trying to fit in, you're probably going to get rejected more. This is a very good thing. Because what really sucks is getting hired based on who you were pretending to be in a job interview, because then you have to keep pretending forever, which is a recipe for instant resentment. If you're not pretending, you get to work with people who like and respect you and with whom you feel the same in return. It's a win-win. And you're going to do less and gain a lot more. When you're shape-shifting, you're applying to so many jobs, hoping someone will notice you. When you decide you'd rather just be yourself, you tend to only apply for things that genuinely excite you. Your focus is no longer quantity, it's quality. When you're all about quantity, you tend to get lazy and routine and say boring crap. Be honest, how often are you copying and pasting cover letters and changing just a few words here and there? Do you think this is going to land you the job of your dreams? When you're focused on quality, you'll spend a lot more time on just a few applications, but that effort is incredibly obvious to anyone on the receiving end. And by the way, you guys know that I wrote this a couple years ago, actually almost 4 years ago. And Eva, from earlier in this, she reached out not that long ago to let me know that she actually has her dream job, something that she never thought would be possible. So remember when earlier I said it's going to work? Just letting you know, it did. So are you bought in? How has shapeshifting failed you in the past? I would love to hear. Come share it in the comments.
Oh, I'm assuming some of you who listened all the way through this episode might be job searching. So in that case, you might want some other podcast episodes that we've done about job searching. So there's a really good one we did back in September 2018. It's called A Former Recruiter Tells All and Helps You Get Hired with Emily Liu. And she gives some really valuable and not always super intuitive advice about how to job search more efficiently.
She's a former recruiter, as the title would suggest, but she's also a coach. So she has a really interesting take on being an individual and like kind of gaming the system when it comes to the job search process and being seen, like standing out in that process. We also have one that is not as directly relevant, but I really think there's some good nuggets in there for people, especially to help you kind of question that desire to just want to conform and blend in. Just a little bit of people pleasing, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. How to negotiate anything, even if you're a people pleaser, with Devin Smiley from May 2019. That had a lot to do with money, which is also, if you're searching for a job, at some point you're going to have a conversation about salary. And that is an excellent episode for you to listen to so that you have not only some good takeaways about how to frame asking for more money, but it's so much more about your internal mentality when it comes to expecting to get what you're worth, which I really liked.
Yeah, that's a huge part of the job, of the getting the job part of the equation. And then we have a really good episode called A Master Recruiter Shares 40 Years of Job Search Wisdom with Susan Levine. And that was from back in July 2019. And she has founded multiple recruiting agencies among all different types of industries. So she has a lot of really good wisdom to share.
She gave a good perspective on just the human factor and how being a robot is really not going to serve you in this process. So those are some good ones you should go check out next. And we will be back on Friday with a new side chat. I had a really hard time naming this episode, so I'm not gonna. And I'm still struggling with the fact that I wish I could have named it before we went into it so that I could really have woven the Harry Potter theme into the conversation. But I feel like Harry Potter gets woven into this podcast every other episode, so I think it's fine.
Yeah, there's plenty of Harry Potter references.
But we're going to be talking about something that doesn't actually have anything to do with magic, but what to do when and how to notice yourself fixating on problems that aren't actually the real problem you are actually having.
Yeah, when you displace your problems onto other problems that feel a little bit more manageable.
Yeah.
But you're actually ignoring the root cause. So we
Yeah.
get into that. We're going to help shine some light on the real issues.
Okay. So we will see you then.
Bye.